Webinar is being live streamed. Setting up custom streaming service. I now see our faces, which is great. And we are live, according to this, but I will send us live in 1 second. All right, I can now see YouTube alive. I'm going to turn that off because otherwise I can hear my own self. Now I'm going to start the webinar. All right, here we go. Alrighty, I'm going to give everyone 60 seconds or 30 seconds, 10 seconds to quickly just join while we see people stream in, and then we will get started right away. Thank you everyone for joining. I don't want to waste any time, so I'm going to jump right in. Hi everyone, I'm America Josh and welcome to E3 visa updates. No more visa interview waivers, and do you really need to go back to Australia for interviews? It's a wordy title, I know, but there's a lot to talk about today and there's a lot of information that we want to get across. A little bit of housekeeping to start. This is being recorded and there will be a transcript shared. So it's currently being broadcast on YouTube and on Facebook and things. So you can, right after we finish, you can watch the whole thing. So know that you don't need to take too many detailed notes. We want you to be able to just really listen to what Chantel has to advise and what she has to talk about today. You are able to ask questions if you would like. There is a Q&A setting in the webinar down the bottom on Zoom. I'll be watching those. We'll try to get to as many as possible. We had hundreds of questions and we've tried to consolidate that down into something that's most useful for as many of you as possible. So we will try to address as many of the questions as possible. Please know that I do see them coming in and I will follow up with Chantel as much as I can. I do also want to quickly read this disclaimer because it is really important that you understand that the information in this presentation is provided for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice, professional advice, or personal guidance. It is of a general nature and does not take into account your individual objectives, circumstances, or needs. You should not rely on this information as a substitute for obtaining specific legal or professional advice before making any decision or taking any action in relation to your particular circumstances. We strongly recommend that you seek advice from your qualified legal professional. Neither Chantel, Camissa Markel, Josh, nor America Josh accept any responsibility or liability for any loss arising from the reliance on the information provided in this presentation. I know that is overly wordy and very, very detailed, but want to make sure that basically the crux of it is that this is general advice. We're trying to get you as much information as we possibly can in a very short amount of time. So know that we are going to be doing our absolute best to serve as many as you've possible. So all of that is out of the way. I want to really highlight first, before we go any further, that for a lot of you, this has been a rough week. This has sort of come out of nowhere for a lot of you on the weekend, and it's caused a lot of stress. We've had, Chantel and I have both had dozens, hundreds of questions from Chantel's clients and all of the community at large. And we do understand how difficult it has been for many of you who are planning renewals, planning visas, already have things scheduled. And we're going to try and really get to only the facts because we want to make sure that we're not scaring anyone, but we're also giving you some realistic information about how to move forward. So with all of that said, Chantel, I want to thank you and the team from Camissa Markel because obviously taking this time, I'm sure it has been an absolutely crazy week. You've been on the forefront, I'm sure, of a lot of clients and a lot of questions. So to start, again, thank you for coming. How's your week looked? Do you want to give us a bit of an intro about, what it's looked like for you and your clients this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Josh. And it's such a pleasure to be able to share the information and hopefully, shed some light on what's happening out there. So the week started, the announcement was made Saturday that people should go back to their country of nationality or residence to do their visa appointments. And now, just as a reminder, that's not only Australians, it's all nationalities have to do this, right? But it has affected our community quite significantly because it's very costly to go back to Australia. You have to take off extra PTO time, or, you're working remotely, whatever it is, it takes so much longer to go to Australia to do things. So it has rocked the community quite significantly. So what do we see the effects of the memo? So Monday we had a few clients actually, do their visa appointment at the US Embassy, consulate in London. On Monday, at that interview, they were told they were asked all the regular questions, right, of a normal E3 interview. So it wasn't like they said, well, we don't know if we can process you. They did go
They were
through all the
welcomed in like
regular
normal.
questions, right? So
Yep.
it was indicative that they would, if they could process it, they would. But they did say, listen, we're going to put you on hold because we need to understand the directive of this announcement that was made on Saturday. So either you're going to get a message from us that tells you either you have to go home back to Australia to process this, or we'll tell you to send in your documents and that we will process the visa for you. Since then, all of those clients have received notification to send their passports in, and their online profiles have changed to approved.
Okay.
We've also, on Tuesday, we had another few clients attend their consulate interviews in London, and another consulate also that was not someone's home country. All of those clients were approved that day without any delay. So Monday there were delays, Tuesday no delays, even at the same consulate, right?
Yep.
And on Tuesday, we even had one client attend a consulate that was not his home country of nationality or residence, and was issued the visa the same day. And
Right.
so I think, and then today, actually, another consulate that was not home country or country of nationality approved on the spot. So I think we are trending upwards.
Yep.
So I think it's going in a positive direction. I don't want to give it, I know I'm usually the glass is half full, but don't want to give too much positivity, and I'm not dismissing the stress that this comes with either.
For sure.
Right? So, for example, the client that we had that needed their visa issued in one day, they were a change of status, change of employer actually, and they were butting up to their 60-day grace, and they had family members. The family members were about to fall out of status if his visa was not able to be issued relatively quickly. And so we felt very fortunate that this announcement did not require him to fly to Australia, because taking a whole family back to Australia is very expensive, and then they could have fallen out of status. So,
yeah. No, that's, I mean, exactly, great points. And I think we want to, as I said at the start, like we want to make sure we've got the most information. We want to be positive about the outlook, but we do acknowledge, and I've got already questions coming in, like, yes, those people already had their appointments booked and scheduled. So yes, we will talk about the fact that they are part of a particular subgroup of what we're talking about today. So Chantel, let's go, like, I want to make sure we've got the fundamentals, because the language in the actual directive from US or the State Department is very specific about how they talk about exactly what was changed. So I know you've got a document you can share, which I think might help, which is the actual language. Do you mind stepping through?
I'm going to share this document.
There we go. Beautiful. Yep.
So
I can see.
let's just go through. So and look, everyone's familiar with this by now, the people that are on this call, because if you're on this call, this is affecting you and you've already heard this.
Yeah, this is the same screenshot from the State Department website, by the way, just so everyone knows.
So the language says that non-immigrants should. So immediately when this came out, my interpretation was they should, right? Schedule their interview in their home country. But this is, quite frankly, Josh, this has actually always been the directive. It's just that now it's been announced in a memo. It has always been, if you went to the Bahamas website, for example, even before this announcement, the Bahamas website did say you should interview in your home country. Third country nationals should not process at our consulate, but people just still were, right? Because they were like, oh, so many people have tried and tested this and it's been fine, so I will too. And people just weren't reading the fine print anymore. So this is just restating directive that was kind of already in place, that there's always been this underlying people should apply in their country of nationality, also because if you have any issues, right, if you've ever been arrested, if you've ever had a DUI, if you've had any of these things, applying in a third country can be more problematic for you than applying in your home country. And I think that this is, I honestly don't think that this memo was directed at Australians. I don't think Australians were the intended group to be caught up in this. And that being said, on Monday, I'm already calling, people with connections to say, hey, can we get a carve out for Australia? Because I don't think Australians were intended with this.
Yes.
The group of people that are intended with this is there's historically been a lot of fraud in the visa process, and applicants will go to a different country than their home country. And there have been instances where the consulate has later found out that that person's degree, for example, actually was not a legitimate degree.
Got it.
But if they had interviewed in their home country, that consulate would have recognized that document. So there was a period, for example, where Canada would not even accept Indian nationals at the Canadian consulate for this reason of, degrees even. So, and over time, there have been periods where consulates won't accept third country nationals. So I just want to say that, this is, it's been something that's out there for a while, right? But now it's announced in a memo, so it's making people nervous. I think that, this bit doesn't really, I'm not going to talk about this because most of the clients on this call, people on this call, I don't think
the country list.
From most countries, right? But let's look at the other things that they say that applicants should note, right? Residence requirement. Applicants must be able to, so this is if you are, so it says you should apply to a country of nationality or country of residence, right? That you have a residence. If you're relying on somewhere where you've got a country of residence, then you should be able to show that you have residence there, right?
Yes.
So, and we can come to that later. I'm sure you're going to ask me more questions about what does that mean, and I can expand on that. But if you look at this, I don't know why they labelled it fees, but they said applicants who schedule non-immigrant interviews at US Embassy or consulate outside their country of nationality or residence might find that it might be more difficult to qualify for a visa. So that goes back to what I was just saying before.
They're effectively caveating their own announcement by saying,
right.
We have an option.
Sometimes if you have an arrest and you show up to a consulate that's not, and you're a third country national and you show up to let's just say you're Australian and you go to London or Bahamas and they see the arrest and they don't know how to deal with it, often they're like, they will say, and this is historically in the past, you need to go home to your home country to have this visa adjudicated. We don't want to deal with it, right? So, so that's what they mean by that. And also, if we look at appointment availability, wait times for non-immigrant interviews may vary by location. Applicants applying outside their country nationality or residence should expect to wait significantly longer for an appointment. So when you book a visa appointment, so I just want to, the thing I'm trying to highlight here is not all of this is new stuff. It's stuff that actually exists. So when you go to book your appointment, and Canada is a great example of this, and other countries as well, it will say, and particularly during COVID, a lot more consulates had this, it will say, are you a national or resident of this country? And if you say yes, you see that there's immediate appointment availability for those people. When you say no, then there's appointments that are like 3 weeks out. So this is not necessarily new. Always third country nationals have had.
I was going to say, and the wait time on the State Department, the calendar that it says wait times generally also has a caveat at the top. It's always said, like, this doesn't apply to third country nationals. We don't even list their wait times on that side either.
Right, that's right. So third country nationals have always been deprioritized, if that makes sense. So all consulates are taking care of their nationals first. And and a great example of that was during COVID, right? When consulates actually said, you know what, third country nationals actually can't come to our consulate.
Okay. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so that was really what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so
I can stop sharing now.
So then for the existing, so the people that have already booked appointments. So just a quick question, the story, the examples that you gave at the beginning, are they all E3 Australians, the ones that have had, the ones that you've been speaking to at consulates around the world to date, have they all been E3 Australians?
That's a great question.
For the last couple of days?
They actually have, sorry, no. Oh, they have all been Australian, but one was an H1B. And the other were E3s. Okay. We have to remember that this doesn't just affect E3s as well.
Exactly.
Right? So you might be applying for your O1. There's a lot of Australians on here that are O1 or H1B because maybe they're going through the green card process, which I've said lots of times, you don't have to switch to H1B to go through the green card process. But any non-immigrant visa that you're applying for right now, this applies to whether you're Australian or not Australian as well, right? Yeah.
Okay, so based on that should language and the sort of the should, and I guess there's also that part of the document you just shared says that should generally not be cancelled for the people that have already got appointments. So if we focus on the people that have already got appointments, already had appointments before this last weekend, what do you make of, the generally and the could and the should and the like? Do you think they are sort of okay to go about their process from what you've seen?
Yeah, if so far what we've seen that the people that already have appointments booked, that those appointments are being honoured. We haven't. It said they should generally not be cancelled either. So far
Very
we haven't
specific.
seen them get cancelled. So
Yeah,
our initial response was, if your appointment's not cancelled, which that could happen, right? Moving forward, maybe that's something that might happen. But
yep,
if your appointment's not cancelled, then you're not going to get your MRV feedback. If
yep.
you're happy
And
to
they've explicitly
travel
said that
there,
they won't
yeah,
give it
so,
back. Yeah,
and this is before we could see what was happening. If you're happy to travel there, and most of the people were already there, right, at this point by
yeah,
Monday,
yeah.
you've got nothing to lose from going.
Sure.
So, and then since then, we've seen positive outcomes from the people that were already booked going to their consular appointment that was not in Australia, if you're Australian. So we have encouraged people that are already booked to proceed with their appointments unless that appointment gets cancelled.
Okay, so unless they actively hear in advance, yeah, that is different. So you mentioned before, there's no harm in giving it a shot. If you're there and you haven't heard that you've been cancelled, do you mind just sort of clarifying what's the worst that can happen if somebody goes to their appointment and let's say that consulate is one of the ones that says like we don't want to issue to third country nationals? Does that damage me, or is it just like what's the next step from there?
If you've ever let's just say they say we don't want to process this.
Yep.
Right. So say the consulate does the same thing that the US consulate on Monday did. I think that's what the options would be. They'll say either you need a hold and we'll process this, or worst case scenario, they say we're not processing it. You need to go back to Australia.
Yep.
Then that appointment will come up as refused.
Okay.
But a refusal does not hurt you for your subsequent application. So
Okay.
then you can go back to Australia and apply, and that refusal that happened in London before you went back to Australia will not hurt your subsequent application. So that's
Understood.
also
So
another reason why I would say there's no real
give it
harm
a
in
shot.
trying if you're there and you're willing to
Yeah.
try.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we are again. We've acknowledged that, like flying somewhere and hoping for the best. I ultimately it comes down to analyzing like your tolerance for risk. It is like how
exactly.
much are you willing to risk the MRV fee? And just to clarify, you said the MRV fee is not refundable. So once you've paid for that appointment, that's
Correct.
gone, and you cannot transfer it to another country. You can't use that somewhere else, right?
You cannot use it somewhere else. You can use it, some MRV fees, you can use at another consulate within that same country, but that's not going to help you, right? Because
Okay,
you just got refused because you're not in your country of nationality or residence. So in this instance, yeah, you wouldn't be able to use it to then transfer it to Australia.
got it. Okay. So I can't transfer it, but let's say I'm not tolerant of like much. I don't want to try because I'm like that going to somewhere and then it not working is not really on my cards. If they do plan to go back to Australia in this example, what is the like, is there anything you want to advise there? What are your thoughts on that?
So if someone has an appointment
Yeah.
somewhere else, and then they go, you know what, I
Like,
don't even want to take
I
that
just
risk.
don't want to try. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a consulate that might not, people haven't been to
Correct.
yet, maybe, and they haven't heard positive responses from that consulate yet, maybe. And they
Yes.
go, okay, I don't want to be the guinea pig. I don't want to go there. I'm just going to cancel. Because there were people that said, I'm just going to cancel and go back to Australia because I feel
100%. Yeah.
right. And if you're a nervous Nelly, then maybe that's the right option, but maybe
Yeah.
it's not. So this is where I say, be careful about that choice, right? Especially if you strategized with an immigration attorney that the consulate that you first picked was a better option for you, right?
Yep.
Because I think that strategy with respect to which consulate you go to is also a key component to a successful E3 in some aspects. So,
100%.
yeah, I would be cautious. I think you just need to be mindful of that as well. And then there's nothing that's without risk, right? Even
Right.
going back to Australia, if there's okay, I'll give an example of this. Different consulates can adjudicate E3s differently.
Okay.
And different consulates will be strict on different things, right? So the example I might give is for example, London is really strict on DUIs.
Right.
So if you have a DUI,
It's just
I
a
would
hard no.
probably not recommend you to go process your visa in London.
Okay.
You eventually get approved, but it depends on if it's like less than, I don't want to get into the nuances of it, but depending on how old or young your DUI is, London can be
Yep.
really problematic.
Okay.
So similar issues like that. So you want to just make sure that whatever consulate you're picking is the right consulate based on your background, other than just your case.
Okay, and that's the kind of
Yeah.
nuance. And I know I say this in every one of our webinars, but it's like immigration lawyers are doing more than ticking the boxes. They've got the information about which consulates are best, and ultimately, yeah, it's this idea that like the snap judgment to just go back to Australia or just do something different, or like don't think of it like that. Think of it as this is an option that you have, and you should present that as one of the multiple options, which is the perfect segue into my next part, which is so the people that don't have appointments. So we've sort of talked about these people. If you've got a little bit of a tolerance for risk, and it should be okay, it literally says in the thing, it should be fine. We know what to do with them. But the people, a lot of the people I imagine who are watching today they don't have an appointment booked. They are planning to either apply for the first time or make a renewal or change jobs or go get a stamp in their visa at some point. Ultimately, let's start with like, what are the options that they can have? And I'll go back through them in some detail.
Right, so you're nervous and you haven't booked your appointment yet. What are your options? Well, you could, as long as there's no other complicating factors, go home, right, to your country of nationality.
Yep.
That's obvious. Then if you have multiple nationalities, there's a lot of Aussies that have more than
Yep.
one passport.
Yep.
We were on the phone with someone yesterday that have 3 passports.
Options.
So you could look at one of the countries. Could you go to the country of one of your other passports, your other nationalities? What about if you have a residence somewhere else? You could look at that as an option of going there because it's country of nationality residency. And then for the people that are super nervous that don't want to travel at all, and also because there's going to be backlogs and it's going to take it potentially could take a lot of time, or maybe you're not going to get an appointment in the time frame you need because of the backlogs that are going to come up. Maybe filing an I-129 from within the US might be the right option for you. And the other thing that you could look at is potentially your spouse. If you're married, your spouse's nationality. Could you, there's a thing called cross chargeability. Could you use your spouse's nationality as an avenue of somewhere to process the visa? And I know a lot of people have asked that, so I brought that up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think we've already recapped the idea of like going home, going back to Australia. Like the idea is like that is still an option. So ultimately, we want to make sure that we really highlight, and we are very aware of how far away I'm very aware of how far Australia is away. But like that is an option. So I want to sort of put that one right at the top because it, in theory, is still a very, 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 apart from which we will get to right at the end of this. We're going to quickly recap that there are no mail-ins anymore, but you can still go back. So you mentioned multiple passports. There's so many questions in the Q&A about multiple passports, and we had so many questions come in. So can you book where you have a second citizenship? Full stop.
Yeah. So we actually tried this on Tuesday because Monday we had people on hold, right? So Tuesday we had an Aussie who has an Aussie and British passport going to his visa appointment in London. And so we didn't know what was going to happen still because the Monday people were put on hold. So we're like, well, this guy shouldn't be put on hold because he actually is a national and resident of the UK. He actually has a house in the UK too. So we're like, okay, you're going to take evidence of your nationality, so you take your British passport with you, as well as your Australian passport, because the E3 visa has to be issued in the Australian passport. And then you're going to take your mortgage and evidence of your house ownership to show you're a resident. So now, and then we gave them the printout with the highlights and a little cover sheet that said, you need to process this person because they are a national, they're applying in a country of their nationality and residence, in fact. So on all, for all intents and purposes, this person qualifies for you to adjudicate him. And so we prepped him on everything to say, and he was shoving it in their face at the appointment, actually. And I think by then, clearly, because we had other clients the same day that only had Australian passports that got approved the same day, I think they'd figured out their situation by then. And so they said to him, it's okay, we don't need it. And I think that's because they'd already made the decision that they're going to approve
Understood.
Australians that
We're
don't
applying in a
have
third
British
country.
nationality or residence, because we had 3 other clients same day that then were just approved immediately.
Yep.
So, but if they hadn't have made that decision, I think that potentially, yes, that country of nationality evidence of the additional passport and residence
Yep.
would have helped him, because he could have made that argument, and we could have jumped in to also advocate and say, hey, if it went into administrative processing, hey, you need to adjudicate this because he qualifies under the memo.
Yep. Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
basically the in effect, yes, there should be, according to, even if the sort of strict reading and they really do limit everyone to the
Yeah.
country that they are, like if you hold a passport, and if you can add some residence. I mean, ultimately, one of the big points is that residence, as I understand, it's not defined in this document, right? It doesn't say what
Right.
residence actually means.
So what I think, if you should take it, it does say, if you're relying on country of residence, you should try and take evidence of this. So what are forms
Yep.
of evidence is what people have asked. It
Yep.
is if you own property there, if you have a lease in your name, if you have health insurance, if your kids are enrolled in school there, if you have
Anything.
anything that
Anything.
shows residence there. Just coming back to, there was a point I wanted to make before, which you, gosh, what was it? It was about, what were we just talking about? Because I wanted to jump to that point. I thought it was really
Multiple passports, citizenship.
Yes. So where it might be useful having your multiple passport and citizenship is if what we might see, and we're running out of time, so I'm jumping into content here, but what we might see is what right now people are still able to book appointments, right? In third countries, as third country nationals. But what we saw in COVID was that consulates stopped people from the
Yes.
ability to even book as a third country national. So where your additional passport might really come in handy is being able to get that appointment, because you'll be able to answer, yes, I am a national of that country. And I have an example of that, right? So before even this announcement, the US consulate in Paris was not taking E3s with an Australian passport, but they would take someone who was, if they had a French passport as well, French, Dutch, or Belgian passport, actually. And so we had an E3 who needed to get it approved first, whose spouse is French. The spouse was able to do their E3D there, but we weren't able to get the E3 an appointment there because they'd said we're not taking third country nationals. So that jumps to, I know that
The spouses.
I
Yeah,
want
no,
to
go
go
for
to
it.
the
Yeah,
spouse bit
please.
because
Yeah.
that was an incident where I think it's worth trying, and we tried. Like we were like, let's go like this. And he also has another European passport. So we tried with, well, he's got a European passport, so we should be able to book there. And they were like, no, we're only accepting people with these passports. Oh, well, his wife is French, so he definitely should be able to book here, right? And they were like, no, we're only accepting people with these passports, which I think was also a factor of the booking system is separate.
Doesn't allow for it.
It's not the consulate responding to the booking system. It's a completely different system. And because of that disconnect, that can create problems as well. But yeah, so will we see that roll out? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it'll be at isolated consulates because, Paris was already doing that. And we've seen other consulates periodically here and there do that. And maybe, and for no rhyme or reason, maybe they're low on staff, so they need to limit the appointments they've got. And this is a true fact that they do this. They have to limit the appointments that they've got, and so they'll say, okay, no third country nationals, right? So there was a period, for example, where Sydney had no appointments. I don't know if people remember this. There was a period where Sydney had no appointments, Melbourne had a ton, and it was for ages. And people just thought, oh my God, Sydney's so booked up. But it wasn't actually the fact that they were booked up. I'd met, anyway, what it was that they actually were limited staff. At the time, and they had renovations going on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to flag, by the way, for everyone, just we're going to run a bit over because but like I want to go over because we've got things that I want to make sure we get through. So okay, so ultimately, other passport, if you have multiple passports, yes. If you have other residency, if you can show any evidence of residency, it's going to play a big part. I think to arc back to your point earlier where you talked about don't make snap judgments. It applies for extra passports as well. Like just because you hold another passport, don't necessarily, and just sort of reiterate, like the DUI example in London, different consulates have different wait times. Different consulates have different preferences for who they give particular types of visas to. They are better to work with. So like Am I right in saying like
Yeah,
you want to
absolutely.
really look at the big picture?
And the other point, Josh, is does not just apply to Australians, it applies to everyone, right? So there
Yep.
was a lot of, in the questions that came in, there were a lot of people that said, oh, well, I have an Indian passport and an Australian passport. Can I just go to India to do it? Well, hey, this rule applies to everyone, right?
Yep.
This is people
Indian
have
nationals as well.
non-immigrants have to go to their country of not have to, should go to their country of nationality to process their visa. So that means every Indian national is thinking, they have to go back to
Move
India.
to India.
Now,
Yep.
already wait times in India are long.
Yep.
So they're just going to get longer because now Indian nationals are going other places for the same reason because wait times there were so long, thinking they have to go back there. So that's going to be exorbitant. Also, I think if you had the choice between India and Australia, I would always pick Australia anyway because India is notorious for admin processing and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, so just think about that too, right? Just remember that the country that you might be thinking, oh, I'd like to go there, all the nationals from that country are now having to go there too,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
there's not going to be only backlogs in Australia. Australia actually has fewer visa applicants than a lot of the other countries around the world. So just factor
Yeah.
that in, and particularly at Christmas time, that's when everyone
It's going to
decides
get
to go
crazy.
home and process
Yeah,
it,
and do the
right?
processing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about multiple passports. We've talked about spouses in theory. Like there's an argument to be made for I've got a spouse that has citizenship, or the spouse could come with you on your E3 appointment and you can kind of make an argument. But ultimately, again, it's that risk tolerance. It's that idea that you if you're happy to try and risk the MRV fee, which is ultimately from what we've talked about before, that is the great risk. You're going to have to fly there. It's going to cost you, if you've got a family or a spouse, you're going to pay for flights and you're going to get there and there's a chance that it gets cancelled or you can't chance that you get refused.
Josh, the other point I want to make with the
Yes,
risk of
please.
the MRV fee is that what you could see happen is you might go, okay, I'm going to risk this. I want to try to book, let's just say Paris, right?
Yep.
I'm going to try and book Paris. If you didn't know, now you know not to even bother with Paris. But if you said, I'm going to try and book Paris, and then to get to the calendar, you have to pay the fee, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
to get, and for them to even say, we're not going to take you, you have to pay the fee. So
Yep.
now, especially if it's $340 for one person, you're willing to take that risk, sure. But if you're a family of 5, which we're doing right now for someone, that's $1,700 without knowing that when you get through, they might cancel the appointment if they start to do that. Or say, now we're only taking third country nationals, but you've paid your fee, you can't transfer it to Australia, and now you just lost $1,700, right?
Yep.
So just factor that in when you're paying your MRVV fee to try even.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I am acknowledging all the questions I see. So I-129s. So if you're already in the country and you've already got status, we won't go into too much detail. There are plenty of articles that Chantel's written, that I've written about like the difference between visas and status. But if you're already in the country, is an I-129 still an option? So the extension of status or change of status in country.
It's absolutely an option. Yes, you can do that. But be cautious again, strategize this with your immigration attorney. Is your case a case, and I've talked about this a lot in webinars, right? But before you jump to an I-129, just double check that you're not going from the frying pan into the fire because you don't have a strong specialty occupation case. Then you get an RFE on a specialty occupation. The other thing with filing the I-129, are you kicking the can down the road? Because it's actually really expensive now to file an I-129 because there's so many government filing fees. So you're paying so much more, you don't get the visa in your passport. And then next time you travel, you still got to get the visa put in your passport. And if it's a change of employer, particularly, you can't, if it's an extension, sure, it's going to give you the 240 days of continued employment from
you can keep working.
So it's worth it for that.
Yep.
If you're a change of employer, it's worth it for that if you've got a strong specialty occupation. Number one, extension. But if you're a change of employer, you can't start working for that new employer until the approval comes through, which forces you to then file premium processing, which is another $2,805, right? On top of that, to then, so that's the other factor. I would just think about it broadly and strategize that with your immigration attorney as to whether that makes sense.
So ultimately, I-129s have not changed. So this directive did not impact I-129s, but I-129s have also not changed to the fact that they are still more scrupulously looked at. They want to make sure they've dotted the I's and crossed the T's more so generally than a visa consulate appointment. That's correct.
I think where it might come into play as being important for people too is we're leading into the holiday period, which is, look, we anticipate that the consulates in Australia, the appointments, there are still appointments available, by the way.
Yes.
Maybe now after tonight there won't be, but but you know, we're encouraging people to plan ahead, book your appointment, right?
Book now.
So
Yep.
what might happen is someone might get caught up in if they haven't booked early enough and their visa is expiring, you know, let's just say on January 1st, and they weren't able to get an appointment until February 5th. Now they might say, well, I'm not going to go back to Australia and wait till February 5th. So in that instance, maybe filing an I-129 in between before going to when you can get an appointment, because you do get, if it's an extension,
the automatic extension.
You do get the automatic extension of employment authorization, which is really important. You can continue to work in that instance.
So on that, I know there is also always some talk of an I-94, so you've got your status in the country and you've got an I-94, and that has potentially longer than your visa is approved for. So you've applied for a visa, it goes for 2 years. You left the country after a year, you came back, you got issued a 2-year I-94, so it goes longer than your visa. What is your recommendation in terms of, some of the examples just to quickly throw out there are like if you file an LCA, so you've got an LCA and a valid I-94, do you see that as enough? Or do you think the I-129 process, if you want to stay in country, you need to go through the full I-129 process?
Yeah, look, my view on that is you're authorized, first of all, the immigration officer, when you come into the country on an E3, if you take a look at your E3, a lot of E3s now have the LCA number annotated there, and right under it, it'll have the expiration date of the LCA on there.
Yep.
The reason that's on there is supposed to be so that when you come in, the correct procedure for the immigration officer is to give you, your visa has to be valid to enter. Your LCA date might be even after, your LCA expiry date might even be after your visa expiry date. The immigration officer is supposed to give you until your LCA expiry date, unless your passport expires before that date. So your I-94, this is something that people really need to know, actually, so I'm really glad I'm saying this right now, is that if your passport expires before your visa and or your LCA, be conscious of this, because it is very routine that an immigration officer upon entry will limit your I-94 to your passport expiration date. And people get caught up in that because they think that's going to go to at least their visa end date. Anyway, immigration officers are supposed to give you to your LCA end date. They're not supposed to give you 2 years every time you re-enter, although we're seeing that a lot, that they are doing that a lot. They do that because the E1 and E2, they do get 2 years from every entry. So if I'm on an E1 or E2 and my visa is expiring tomorrow, but I travel out and I come back in, they're going to give me 2 years, even though my visa expires in tomorrow. And on an E1 and E2, I am authorized to continue working for that 2 years, as long as I don't travel internationally after my visa's expired, right? The E3 is different. You are authorized, you're only authorized to work in the US as long as you have about a valid LCA together with a valid I-94, right? So you've got valid stay that's attached to an LCA that's valid. Now, your LCA, so the E3 was modeled on the H-1B visa. Because a lot of people ask, well, can I just, if I've got a long dated I-94, can I just file another LCA, right? Attach it. Well, it's not attached. So your work authorization is actually not attached.
It's just a separate, it's not even
attached to that I-94, because when your LCA gets attached, either through processing the visa at a consulate or filing an I-129. And the reason I take this view is because the E3 is modeled on the H-1B. And this is, I'm really glad you brought this up because I really want to explain this. It's modeled on the H-1B. The H-1B visa requires, you can't, if your H-1B, if you had a long dated I-94 on an H-1B, which often happens because they'll give you 10 days after your petition date when you enter, you can't just file another LCA and stay here.
Specifically, you can.
Absolutely cannot, right?
Yes.
You have to file an I-129 to attach the new LCA to your status, right?
Yep.
So same goes with the Australian E3. If your visa expires, your LCA expires, you need to file an I-129 to attach the new LCA to it, or go to the consulate abroad and attach it to it by doing a visa appointment.
Yep.
during COVID, okay, people are going to say, oh, but you kind of let me do that. So during COVID, I took a little bit of a different view, which was, okay, you got this long dated 994, so you could be here. Okay, if you file this, what we called a bridging LCA during that time.
Yep.
And I let people do that, but only for a short period. Like I'd say, look, it's actually not correct.
It's a bridge.
But it's kind of, let's just do it, but for not long enough that it doesn't look like you're trying to take advantage of the system.
Understood.
Because I felt we could back it up. I felt like if it later got questioned and you go to a consulate and they say, well, why did you do that? You can't do that. They could say, well, I was trying my best to somehow comply, but the reason why I couldn't do my visa application was because for circumstances out of my control. Whereas here, I don't think we have the same excuse. I don't think we can say, I didn't travel. I didn't renew my, I filed a bridging LCA because of circumstances out of my control. I didn't want to go back to Australia. I mean, I didn't want to, I couldn't go back to Australia, right? Or I didn't want to go back to Australia, right? So they're going to say, I don't think that's a good enough excuse to be able to rely on. There's a thing called nunc-pro-tunc to like make the argument. And the only way you can rely on that argument is if you can show circumstances were out of your control. So so I think in that instance, you would just file an I-129 rather than rely on your extended
bridging LCA.
Because even as soon as you file that I-129, you immediately have continued work authorization. E3s didn't have that before, but now they do.
So, and just to confirm, so you file the I-129, you'll get a receipt of your I-129, and the receipt is the evidence that you have 240 days.
No, not even. They receive it.
Cool.
Okay. Sometimes they don't even put that date on the receipt notice. But if you've got evidence that they received it from your FedEx and all that on the day, and they must receive it before your I-94 expires. That's really important. Otherwise, they will not accept it.
Yeah. Check your I-94, everyone. Check your I-94 after this call. Go check your I-94. Please.
And you want to file that also before, by the date of your LCA expiring as well, your previous LCA, right? So now your new LCA is going to
you want it to cross over.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's a safer approach.
Okay. We've got two more things so everyone to signpost where we're going. So I want to go and ask where you think we're headed. Like, is this going to stay forever? Is this going to and I know you're speculating, but I want to ask that question. And the last thing we're going to talk about really briefly is just around the changes from September 2 and interview visa waivers. So the first thing is, where do you see us going? Like, do you think this is sort of in place? Do you think it's suddenly going to change again tomorrow? Do you not know? What's your sort of gut say as a professional in this space?
With respect to the visa interview waivers, you mean?
Sorry, no. To go back to what we've been talking about, so the ability, the having to go back to Australia or having to go back to your country of residence or citizenship.
Yeah.
What's your sort of general take on is this now in place and people should expect this is going to be the process, or should people wait to book because you think it'll change? Like, just sort of projecting out a little bit from your experience with policy changes like this.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of people had the question of what if you try and book afterwards? So we do have some clients that did not even know about the announcement and had booked appointments after the announcement. So we will see how those go. That's going to be so we'll have updates on that. I'm an optimist, so I feel like, they didn't know about the announcement. So I think those people can clearly say I didn't even know about the announcement at the time it booked. But, it will be interesting to see how those go. So if you're conservative, maybe wait a bit if you've got time to wait. If you're a risk taker, take the risk. But the thing is, just remember that those countries are going to have backlogs too. And you might not even be able to get an appointment after you've paid your fee. So and then with Australia, it's going to get backlogged there. Also because people can't, so there is no waiver now, right? Before you could get an interview there more readily, even because people could do the mail-in, which is the interview waiver. Now you can't. So everyone that needs to renew their visa that goes back to Australia before in other years, it's always been backlogged at Christmas time, right? We've
Yep.
always said to clients, if you're going at Christmas time, expect it to be a 2-3
It's going to be
week
hard.
wait.
Yeah.
So if you do go back at Christmas and it's a 2-3 week wait, don't think it's because of this announcement. It's because if you've never gone back to Christmas before, because always it's a long wait. But it's going to be
Yep.
a longer wait now because people are going to be fighting for appointments, because before people could do the mail-in, and so there were more appointments available. Now less mail-ins. Also before, people that had children under the age of 14, those children didn't have to attend the appointment. They have to attend the appointment now.
Right. Yep.
Anyone over the age of 85 didn't have to before. Now they do. I don't think that's going to really move the needle much.
Yep.
But
okay. So,
yeah.
but it's likely going to get more difficult in Australia just by nature of, like, it always does. And adding to this, yeah, it's going to be tough. So it basically is like, if you can plan for this, because it's going to be in place.
I think the interview waiver is ultimately gonna this is my prediction, is gonna cause more of an effect on this
Yes.
than the fact that you have to go to the interview, because the no waiver was gonna backlog.
It was what was speeding the whole process up.
Yeah.
All right. I think, and I know there are questions, and I apologize, I don't want to go any longer just because I want to make sure we've really kept this as concise as we can. What we will do is, I've got a full record of all of the questions that have come in. I will absolutely make sure that Chantel and I will do some follow-ups. We will absolutely, both of us, be sure to follow Camissa Markel and America Josh on Instagram. We both try and keep a log of everything that's going on in the community. Everyone sharing information and keeping us up to date with what's going on really dramatically helps us. It does, because I mean, Chantel's got dozens of people all over the world filing for visas, and it's absolutely incredible, all the information that she gleans. But then ultimately the online communities and people sharing their stories about what is actually going on boots on the ground helps us, because there are many, many consulates and embassies that are taking these appointments. So thank you very, very much, Chantel. Is there anything else you would like to quickly address, or
I think that's pretty much it. And just, make sure that you don't make a rash decision back, because I feel like when people are in moments of confusion or fear, sometimes you can make a decision based on that. So I just think I want to remind people to just, if you do have an immigration attorney, strategize with your immigration attorney, what choice makes sense for your case, not just about this announcement, if that makes sense.
No, it really does.
Yeah.
Ultimately take a deep breath, and hopefully we can work through all the strategies that we've always had in place. Chantel, Camissa Markel, thank you. This has been immensely helpful. We've had so many comments and so many thank yous. As I said, make sure you follow Camissa Markel on Instagram, check out their website. Chantel, you take clients all the time. So if you do need legal counsel, and if you, again, this isn't personal advice, you might have a particular scenario that is very detailed. So please, please, please be sure to get personal advice from someone like Chantel, and be sure to check out americajosh.com and follow me on Instagram and Facebook and all of the great places. Chantel, thank you very, very much for your time. We sincerely appreciate it. This has meant a lot.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. I was going to suggest, and you can say absolutely no, but I could, if you and I wanted it, we could end it. But if we wanted to continue, if people wanted to stay, we could continue and record Q&A time.
I think we'll probably do, I've got note of all of the questions. I think what we'll do is we'll probably release a follow-up where you and I do chat, because I'm seeing how many questions come in, and I know people have left, and we've said that we would end it. So I just want to make sure we give everyone but we will absolutely come out with some follow-ups to some of the questions. I'm going through all of them right now, and we will absolutely do our darndest to go through all of them. So Chantel, thank you very, very much for all of your